Go.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Verlick, the 10-year Strategic Planning Committee Board Chair. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. on May 13th. So welcome, everybody. Good to see you all.
Good evening.
So, Rory, I imagine we should identify everybody who's here.
That's smart.
So, Don, why don't you, we'll start, you're down below me in the Brady Bunch square, so.
Don Smith.
And Stefan?
Stefan Bahuniak.
Bob Finley.
Rory Burke.
And Kathy Verlick. Look at the Brady Bunch is all here. That's what it makes me think of when I see the little squares, is the Brady Bunch. So now this is my first official Zoom meeting as part of a board. So do we go through the regular agenda with Pledge of Allegiance, etc.?
Yep.
All right, well then we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so Rory, you kind of covered it. This is Kathy again. Our meeting format requirements, you know, the meeting is being recorded and we should all identify ourselves as we speak. Do we have any public present who would like to make a comment?
There is no public present.
All right, so then the next item we have on our agenda is just to sort of catch everybody up and make sure that we are all starting from the same starting point. Our last meeting was in February, which seems to be a lifetime ago. And the world is a different place than it was on March 13th when I got a text from you, Rory, saying, I don't think we'll be having a meeting tonight.
Yeah. So in terms of implementation, as we discussed in February, the senior staff were all given copies of the one-year plan and told what the expectations were. Follow-up conversations were had with many of them about what in particular was expected of them. There was, you know, I think in our desire to write a strategic plan, we were not as clear as we could have been. We kind of chose language that I guess made sense given what we received, but didn't really explain things explicitly. But I told them the spirit of what was in it, and several of them were very comfortable with what was expected of them. That being said, obviously things are a little different, and it will be a kind of touch and go as we approach a new normal. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts, but you know, we haven't, at the senior staff meetings, we have not even discussed it just because we've had more pressing matters. You know, hopefully things slow down and return to normal and we can get back on track. Even with several months delay, I'm sure most of what was in the one-year plan is still very manageable if things return to normalcy relative.
do we readdress this is Bob Finley, do we readdress in a 30, 60, 90 kind of plan with the impact that COVID might have had? I'm not sure if you need to, but is that something that you have to think through?
We could. I mean, I suppose as of right now, you know, we're starting to put together our reopening plan and what that will look like until an executive order moved meetings to this format, right? Even when May 20th comes around and things start reopening, my understanding is the gatherings are still capped at 5, which essentially rules out any board that we have. So these will continue for the foreseeable future until we get to a point where the state further relaxes any of the restrictions that they put in place. Which I say because I guess it depends what we want to do.
This is Kathy. One question that I have, and I've been thinking about quite a bit in the past couple months is, and perhaps this is something we need to pose to Kurt, is what changes, if anything, from this in terms of the role of this committee? I mean, i.e., we were at a place where we were creating it was a new beginning. We were starting over. Is there something we should be thinking about differently? Are our priorities different now than they were 5 months ago?
This committee, I don't see why they would be necessarily. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion.
I think you might have some, your plan's the plan, right? So you've created a long-term plan. You have the short-term kind of plan that you put together for the year, and now you have this interrupt. So that's why maybe it's how we address what the interrupt is doing to the plan and how that moves forward. That's kind of where I was going with the 30, 60, 90. Is there something we have to identify short-term, mid-term, and long-term from an impact perspective to the plan? Plan's going to be the plan, what the plan is, and it's going to take, either to formulate or we may have to make some changes to the plan, but we already know what that vision was originally, right? So do we take just more of that kind of short, mid, and long-term vantage point against what you currently have?
I think because our plan, the 1-year plan is obviously on a 1-year time frame. The structure that we had in place, which already has changed in terms of we were supposed to meet with Kurt in April, and that did not happen. So, but I mean, it was basically, we'll check in with you in April and we'll check in with you in October and you'll give us any updates. And then December, we provide the update to the selectmen. Those are the only 3 kind of check-ins that we have. So in terms of a 30, 60, 90 time frame, we don't operate in that short a term in normal times. We could revisit the 1-year plan.
Well, that's what I was more touching on, the 1-year plan.
Yeah. To see if any of the items, I off the top of my head, I can't think of a ton other than some of the departments. And again, the first month was absolutely crazy, but things have settled down a bit where the police chief may not have had time to put together an inventory like we had asked him in that 1 month. As we settle into a new normal, I don't see why over the course of the next 7 months, he can't manage that unless things change. So that's what I mean. We weren't asking people to get things done in a month or even 3 months. We were just saying, when we go to the selectmen next December, the expectation is this is done, or we have a very good reason why it's not. So we could take a look at it and see. I can't think of anything that would be impacted by social distancing.
Yeah, if there's no impact, then the plan is what it is, right?
Maybe for some of the community center related issues, obviously if we don't get back to public programming, any programming related goals kind of get put on hold until that returns. I definitely think it's worth looking at, and just seeing what could potentially be an issue as we go forward.
The one of them in there is the RC3 zoning regs on Route 34. So planning and zoning is not meeting. That's certainly, that was probably
That's going to be an impact. Yep.
to move that ahead anyways. Is Public Works fully staffed, Rory, or are they on some kind of reduced staffing?
They have them on operating in shifts to reduce the total number at any given time, but as far as I know, they're at full staff.
Two completely different shifts, like.
I'm trying to remember what they put in place. I think so, but it may be like a
6 to 2 and 2:30 to.
That's what I'm thinking. Overlapping shifts, not like a day and a night shift, but just so you don't have.
So everybody's not at the shop at the same time.
Right, exactly.
And I really think they have it like you grab your equipment and you leave the garage. There's no hanging out in the garage. Everybody has assigned trucks, we went through with all the department heads ways to kind of minimize congregation and contact.
Okay.
So maybe, this is Kathy, maybe one thing that we should be thinking about is taking a look at our current goals and objectives and kind of get an inventory on what are reasonably impacted by, our period, our transition phase. Because here's my thing, if there's, if there are 10 things and 8 of them are off the table because everything is topsy-turvy, then do we find, is there something else that we can be doing to help move the town forward, based on the knowledge, the experience, the exposure that we have to, a lot of different areas. I mean, I'd hate to just sit here and have a meeting every month and say, well, we don't know, that's not happening, or nope, they can't get to that. And basically all we're doing is sitting and waiting for December to stand up and say, nothing has changed. Nothing, that seems to be a monumental waste of time if there's something better that we can be doing.
Yep. I agree.
I mean, based on the plan that we had laid out at the end of last year, in terms of what our tentative schedule would kind of be for this year, I don't see, obviously, I think we now have the additional step of just reviewing the 1-year plan to see if it's COVID compatible and see what needs to be changed. But otherwise, I don't see why the schedule has to change other than we missed 2 months. There's still refining that needs to be done, and clarification and additional research And then we can still ask the staff. They can call into our meetings now, and they don't have anywhere to go. So there should be even less reason that it would be difficult to schedule with them. I don't, it's not to say that our priorities might not shift in the medium term, right? Like we're 2 months into this and there's already some things that you can kind of see on the horizon. But I think we can't say for certain any kind of long-term changes in priorities that might result from this. I think that's something we should keep in the back of our heads as we move forward. But I think otherwise, we should maybe be prepared for slightly less to be done this year than we would have hoped. But there's most of what we're asking for is administrative. I struggle to think of many things that would be directly impacted other than staff might have slightly less time to address them.
This is Kathy. I mean, I think that's sort of precisely my point. Our administrative goals, what need to be prioritized now, or is there something else that needs to be prioritized? I mean,
by staff?
By staff, yeah. By the community.
Well, tell you what, why don't I?
All of our prioritized goals, Kathy, or just the 1 year?
I think where Kathy was going is if anything fell out from this year, then we can pull in from, if there's any items, I'm saying that loud, could get pulled in versus allowing it just to, kind of close down. We miss that, we can have a miss and then not fill that hole. Would I be saying that correctly, Kat?
That's correct too, but I feel like one of the unique aspects of this particular collection of people is that we look at the whole animal. Many different, most departments, most commissions, most boards look at one piece of the animal. Whereas by our very makeup and our very, marching orders, we look at the whole animal. Is there something that we can be doing to aid, the Board of Selectmen, aiding our town in becoming the, one of the great things about Seymour is that we've got our act together in a lot of ways. We really have our act together, and this commission has been a big part of that. And I feel like we might have experience or understanding or even just insight that could help keep Seymour, as we come out of this, this COVID place, continue to have our act together. Not have to start everything over. Yes, let's look at our plan as it stands today and say, yeah, okay, it's really important that we do A, B, C, D, E, and F. But as part of that, is there something else that we should be looking at? Should we be looking at, and I don't even know what they are because I haven't thought about it particularly, not really knowing, sort of how the world has changed outside of my own house, but I know that outside of my own house, inside my own house, it's changed. I don't know, I guess it's just, I feel like maybe there's more that we can be doing to support rather than worrying about reports.
Well, what's on the table right now is the reopening plan for town hall. So I guess, Roy, is there a clear-cut path to that, or is there planning assistance that could be led to that endeavor that might free you guys up or might might identify some pathways, or might kind of identify, get some of the steps down into writing. I don't know.
So we have a framework put together based on the guidance that came out from the state and some other ones that we've seen. I just pulled bits and pieces and tried to put them into a framework. I mean, I think the more people that look at it and contribute to it, the better it will be, hopefully. So I'm all on board with sending it to you guys if you want to take a look at it. In terms of like what we should be doing generally, what I'll say is, you know, the point of this board is to make sure that the town is not ignoring its long-term responsibilities and is planning appropriately for them. Where I could see this board having, you know, being very helpful in the current situation is that, you know, things are very different now. We don't know what the long term will look like anymore, but based on, you know, there is a likelihood of prolonged economic contraction. So if that is going to be the case, which nobody knows for sure, but if it is, you know, that is an issue that Seymour is going to be facing for the next several years, which in turn impacts our ability to do things in the 10-year window that we're looking at. So, you know, we've been focusing on a very short term. You know, when this started, we were just looking at the next week, right? So I would say now more than ever, keeping an eye on the long term is important for us to be doing. But the long term that we had planned for may not be the reality anymore.
The long term that we end up with, yeah.
So I view our role very similar, just that the world has changed. You know?
And that's okay in a strategic plan, because you should be able to alter it based on the incoming. Strategic plan is a moving target. You can put your goals down, especially when you're looking at it in a 10-year window, but 5 years in, you're going to find things are going to change. And it's okay to make those altering changes. That's why this is the time to reassess and look at what you have today and see is, okay, what can we do to formulate it to maybe, you know, accommodate what we're seeing right now.
Right.
There's going to be some long-term plans you're going to maintain, but then add some of the new stuff that you're seeing that's going to impact us that we need to address. I think, you know, it's a moving target.
Yeah.
We do our strategic plan every year.
Mm.
We have a 10-year plan, but every year we revisit it and reformulate it and restructure it. So,
Kathy, I don't know if what I said was what you were thinking.
Well, yes, but I think that our goal from day one has been to be proactive, not reactive. And I feel like even if we change the path, we need to have a path. You know, we know today that our, you know, the goals in 6 months are not the same as they were the last time we talked. Maybe some of them are, but, you know, some of them, it may not. that may not be the priority anymore. Maybe the priority, I'll make it up for, you know, I don't know, public works is to you know, instead of focusing on, you know, I don't know, whether it's keeping the staff, you know, mindful of the long-term needs of the staff, or, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, I feel like I really want to take a look at our plan the way it is today and really just kind of go, yeah, no, that's not important.
Well, so, you know, what I'll say is I think the tendency in any type of crisis situation is to make short-term decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You do what you have to do just to get by, and to an extent that's inevitable. But I think this committee's role is to kind of make sure that while we're doing what we have to do to get by, we're not doing it at the expense of the future taxpayers of Seymour. You know, we've over the years kind of gone back and forth with like, well, are we supposed to be doing the things, or are we just supposed to be providing guidance, right? So especially in a situation like this, you know, you want to dive in and help out, but you know, in the long term, the staff has to be able to support to run things. And all of the boards, the oversight boards, their job is to make sure that they're doing that in a way that, you know, the taxpayers agree with. It's not to get into the weeds, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree fully with Rory on that. I think we can certainly make adjustments to how we conduct our business, or things that we want to add or remove from the plan for long term, but it's really up to the professional staff and the boards to decide how the town manages a crisis. There's not a whole lot of room for us to be throwing in a lot of our 2 cents outside of what we've already established as good practice.
And that's to say, like, you know, things have changed, right? And in this situation, you know, some of the things that we put in as kind of pie in the sky, wouldn't it be nice if may become necessity, right? Like, if we are facing prolonged economic contraction, funding is going to be a serious issue. So all of these things like regionalizing things that were, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could get regionalized police or fire or, you know, any number of things? Well, we may not have a choice.
Yeah, maybe become a reality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could easily lead to us bolstering and adding some items related to emergency preparedness in our plan. I think that would be a good
100%.
opportunity to assess. And we could learn a lot about not only what Seymour did well or didn't do well, but what, you know, every other community in the entire world essentially did well or didn't do well. I mean, there's going to be just such an abundance of data coming out of this at every single level. Every single aspect of life has been affected everywhere in the world. I mean, there is no shortage of places that we can look at. And, you know, a big part of what we do is gather data and then use it as an input to what goes into the plan. I mean, this is a great opportunity for us to really, once the dust starts settling, and to really look at what happened and what we could do to be better prepared the next time it happens, because, you know, you never know that this could be a blip on the radar, or this could be happening all the time now. We just don't know.
Absolutely. And you know, so for example, only a handful of staff were set up to work remotely, when this started, which was an issue. You know, we made it work, but obviously, maybe as, you know, when we talk about our technology plan, now a focus on encouraging or enabling telecommuting, right? I mean, part of town hall's business is that it must always be open, and that services, you know, have to be provided no matter what. But the ability, the amount of wrangling that it took to get it workable, I mean, it took weeks. So if we can just put stuff like, you know, everyone, when we do computer replacements now, everyone gets a mobile device. You know, if it's a tablet with a docking station that you use as your computer at town hall, that's great. But then you also have the ability to take that home, and that is, if we're looking at a situation where things are reopening now, but we may go back into some sort of modified lockdown at some point, that needs to be a priority, right? I mean, that's something that we can look at, you know? The same with, you know, some things that were hopefully we'll figure something out. The volunteer status of fire and ambulance, fortunately, have not been an issue. But that was a major point of discussion during this. Because what if people don't show up? You wouldn't blame them for doing it, but what if they don't show up? You know what I mean? So this definitely highlighted some real vulnerabilities in the way that we had been doing business.
Would it be appropriate for us to, and I'm going to just use a term that we use in marketing, a post-mortem, and it's kind of the wrong term right now, but to sit down with, maybe, you know, it's, I don't know if it's Kurt, I don't know if it's the Board of Selectmen, I don't know if it's just maybe Rory, you bring back information to us to say, what are those pain points that are, you know, as they're arising, so that we can look at it and go, is it something that we can get, you know, come up with a plan for, gather data, look at, and make a recommendation or a suggestion?
Absolutely. So typically, if you know, there's anything typical about this with any kind of disaster, you know, eventually, when we had the tornadoes, right, that was a relatively prolonged thing, right? That took 2 weeks to get back to normal. So once things were back to normal, typically the emergency services, the emergency management director, everybody sits down and does a debrief, right? And typically they're the only ones involved, because typically they are the only ones involved. I mean, this is obviously a unique situation, but I think a more widespread debrief is going to be necessary. And I think you know, we run into some issues, like we want things to be as transparent as possible. However, we don't want to like compromise people's confidence in the stability of the system, right? So parts of it, I think, might be privileged you know, like the emergency management parts of it, some of it they might prefer to do in a more private situation. But otherwise, I mean, absolutely. I think this should be documented thoroughly, what everybody did, the issues that they encountered, because this, you know, this probably isn't over. So even though we may not be returning to normal, before, if we return to a sort of stability, I absolutely think there needs to be a debrief, where we can kind of take a look at things systematically, so that if we have to go back into a modified lockdown, we're much better prepared. I mean, what we're talking about with the reopening plan is we create, you know, I keep hearing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Bob, in your email, you said like a 30, 60, 90 type situation. We want to create like red, orange, yellow, green, where that color is associated with, you know, X, Y, and Z measures, so that if we're loosening up, that's great. And hopefully we won't ever go back. But if we have to, we're back on yellow, which means these things are in place now. Then we go back to orange if we need to, and then back to yellow. And
So you have criteria built upon each one of those color codes, and you fall back or you move forward, right?
absolutely. And it's a way that people can, I hope it doesn't become a kind of thing where people are able to associate it freely without having to look up what it means. But, you know, at least we're prepared.
But you brought up something it's important from a process standpoint, and maybe it's a steering committee item, maybe it's not, but from a process, a debrief should always follow an emergency, so you can capitalize on the findings. So that's a systematic process that should be a part. I don't know where it falls in, but that is definitely something that should always occur.
Absolutely, and it will. Like I said, what will be the challenge is that the emergency service guys are very familiar with it. They do it after every disaster that we have. The challenge will be for the staff who have never done one before. Which isn't to say we're not going to do it. It's just to say they won't be familiar with the process. And, you know, those of us who've done the interviews with them, sometimes it can be kind of pulling teeth to get the information you're looking for. But that's, you know, that's the kind of thing that 100% would be shared. It would just be the kind of any vulnerabilities within the emergency services, gaps in coverage kind of things that might not necessarily be widespread.
So is there thought of, I mean, in an ideal world, you're waiting until the smoke clears and life returns back to normal and you're at some semblance of calm. But I'm not sure if that is going to look the same. You know, you may never get to green, you know? Is there a plan to maybe have to start looking at things even though you're still kind of yellowy orange? Or is it the plan to just wait? What is the thinking?
So we're not at a point yet where we can kind of stop and take stock, right? Because now we planned the shutdown, and then we planned the logistics of keeping things operating while shut down. And now we're planning opening, right? Once we have a plan in place, which isn't to say it will be firm, but once we have a functioning framework that we're moving forward with, I mean, we have 7 days until restaurants can open outdoor seating, right? I mean, this is, I'm not talking long-term here, but at that point, I haven't spoken to the emergency management director about this, but you know, we've been in constant contact with everyone throughout this. But I think we will have to, I mean, I imagine in the next month, because to your point, we may not get to green yet.
So it feels to me, Rory, that our best course of action right now is to just take lead from you. And you know, it's very weird for me not being involved. You know, normally, you know what's going on, so you know how to respond. You know, at this stage of the game, now I may be the only one who doesn't know, you know, how to respond. So my gut is to just say, okay, Rory, we're gonna sit tight. You know, we can go in and we can, you know, we can tidy up our house. We can, you know, we can look at the plan and maybe get an idea, you know, start to put our thinking behind what we, you know, where we think, you know, maybe this isn't going to be as important, but it really feels like we need to sit tight and take some.
You know, as long as we're doing Zoom meetings and not in-person meetings, I think doing collaborative work the way we sometimes have during meetings will be difficult, just given the limitations of the medium. So I think we should move to a more like homework and discussion kind of thing, which we've also done. You know, it's not new for us, but I don't, you know, I think I personally have not taken a look at the plan since the beginning of all of this. I don't know if you guys have pulled it out for some leisurely reading at any point, but you know, I think we can do that. The 1-year plan, the 10-year plan, both take a look at it and say, does this all still make sense to us?
But I'm not sure that we can answer that question independently.
You know, it's hard for me, you know, because I'm in it every day, to know what you guys know. And I am always happy to answer any questions, you know, but I think just the broad lens, I mean, you all know the general landscape, right? You know what businesses, excuse me, what businesses are doing, you know, I don't need to tell you that like youth sports are a big question mark right now, and school is a big question mark, and everything is kind of a question mark. I don't know that much more than you guys do about going forward, right? I mean, I know more about what's happened specifically, but I think we're all in the same boat about what the future, what next week looks like. So don't think we need to be 100% on hold. Because if we're waiting for the dust to settle, we'll be waiting for a while, probably. So I mean, I think we take a fresh look at things and we see if they make sense generally, right? And that will change. Inevitably, 6 months from now, things will look different than we thought they might. That's just how it's going to be for a while. But, you know, when we're looking at it, it may go both ways, right? We may say, this is too much now. You know, this doesn't make any sense given what the future looks like we think. And then we might have the opposite where we say, this doesn't go nearly far enough now, or this actually made me think that maybe this is something that we should look at, this tangentially related issue.
Being stewards of the plan, Rory, the way I'd see it, we should be able to react based on the incoming information, both in a positive and we as a team, because what we don't want it to be, we find out something and then we all meet and then we have to meet 3 times before we make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to have a forward-looking and a rear-looking view so that as things change, we can make rapid, I'm not going to say it immediate, but rapid action versus it's going to take us 3 meetings to get there. So I think an approach could be, we do look at it as, okay, if everything was green and everything was positive, this is what we're going to do in the next year. And if we're going to see some obstacles, if it was a worst case scenario, this is what we would do. This way, everybody's heads are formulated in the same way, in the manner, so that when whatever happens, we can just all meet and approach it and okay, we're going to take this path.
Yep.
I think that's, if you're going to look at maybe a strategy of maybe what we would be doing now, if there's nothing we can do to help out, really we should be looking at the plan and just be steward and say, hey, listen, we're going to look at it and grass is green or it's a rainy day. And then this is how we act in those instances. I mean,
yeah.
And this and it makes quicker decisions for us. We're still not going to have to meet. We're still going to have to do all those things, but it'll be a lot quicker if we already have formulated best case and worst case scenarios.
So do you mean that in terms of the existing 1-year plan, sort of the 1-year plan that we were looking to have for 2021, the 10-year plan, or all of the above?
Personally, because we're the stewards of the plan, I go back to that terminology. Yep. I think you have to have them all, but okay. I think you start short and you get at least get the 1 year, so we have a dynamic that's real time, and then your next step would be, okay, let's look at the overall plan and see if we can do the same thing. This way, we take the baby step first, have the grass is green, rainy day approach. Get that 1-year plan covered so we're all in agreement, this is what we would do, and then look at it from a 10-year plan further out, a few meetings out,
Yeah.
Well,
no,
even
absolutely.
defining, if we're using a defined and uniform, criteria for evaluating it, we're not going to have 4 possibilities, we're going to have 3, or we're going to have 2, or whatever it is, so that it's consistent across the board. And then when we apply that measurement, that we've used for the 1-year plan that is consistent, then we can apply it to the 10-year plan, and it's it's a more organized kind of thing. I mean,
it'll just help make our decisions quicker.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe then the first thing we can do is define what our, what color is our grass? Is our grass always green, brown, or on fire? Or is it just, you know, go or no go, green or not green. And maybe that's not something we can answer today, but maybe as for homework, we read back through the plan and maybe think to ourselves, okay, well, what are the states that this could be in? You know, yeah, everything's January 15th. You know, before we even heard of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the criteria, right? Criteria is we get back to normal, and it happens in a short period of time, versus we don't get back to normal for the next year, and it's going to change some of the, you know, some of our plan. I mean, that's how we have to look at it.
Right.
Or some of where we thought we'd be by then.
Yeah, and I mean, again, in terms of the 1-year plan that was put out, I'm not saying it'll be untouched, but it should not be that severely impacted, right? A lot of it was HR stuff because we were waiting on having an HR manager. But we have one now, and he'll be busy. But if the expectation is still that he's getting stuff done, well, then he's got to get stuff done. And I think that's the same for a lot of it.
But I think you know that. If you were to ask me, I mean, coming into new to the team, I don't know that for a fact, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, getting that common ground as well, so that we're all saying the same thing. Because you might be 100% right. I'm not sure. You know.
Is staff still getting paid for a full week, even though they're not coming into town hall except for the 1 day or 2 days? Are they still full time, so to speak?
Yep. At least through the new budget,
Which is July 1.
July 1.
Because that could change too, right? What if they change hours? Then the dynamic changes completely.
Yeah, right. And like this is one of the tough things for this committee. Kind of that's out of our hands, right? It's and that's why to an extent we kind of have to react, right? Like the administration is going to make changes that they're going to make, and we have no binding authority. We've talked about this, but you know.
Well, we should be putting marks on the things that we know that could have that potential, so it's very clear to us. It's not a blind side that it happened and we go, oh, you know, we didn't see.
No. So all I mean to say is right, like the 1-year plan. Obviously, if at some point before December, the HR director is fired or laid off, or the IT director is laid off, or, you know, if these positions cease to exist, then the items that were assigned to them are unlikely to be accomplished. I mean, that goes without saying.
That's the rainy day plan that we should be communicating, you know.
Yeah, part of what we've built into this new paradigm, though, is assessing that regularly anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we're getting way too deep into this, to be honest with you. I think that not all that much needs to change. We just need to kind of understand that we need to be more aggressive about trying to figure out where we're at on a month-to-month basis. But we should still be doing all the things that we were going to do anyways.
And I kind of agree. I think we need to add to that we need to do a coronavirus read of what we put together. But I mean, I agree. I think we move forward with clarifying I forget the terminology because it's been a while, but like, you know, the A's were what we put in the 1-year plan. And then we had the B's that needed clarification and the C's that we just didn't think were possible, right? So our plan was to provide clarification where needed, to break down the larger items into smaller action items. You know, all of that can still be done, regardless of what the reality looks like. If we think that these are still long-term goals, you know, maybe we decrease our expectations as to what can be done in a year if staff levels drop or something like that. But otherwise, if those are still the goals that we want the town to work towards, then progress can still be made. It just, we might have to redefine progress.
Agreed. We've built the mechanisms in to deal with this better than we ever could have before, from this committee's perspective anyways. So I think we just stick to the plan. We acknowledge that times are crazy and we adapt as needed, but we should still be refining future priorities, and we should still be assessing where we are at in this year's plan.
Yeah, but I think that's what we just said. What's different? That's what I make sure I'm, for clarity for me, Stefan, what's different than what I just said? Just curious.
Not that much, honestly. I think we're where we need to be. I think that we're doing.
Is there, if there's something that I'm missing?
No, I don't think so. I just think that we're kind of starting to go around in circles, and I don't want people to start missing the point of where we're at. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. That might be me and my newness to here, so.
I don't think you said anything wrong or out of place at all, Bob. I think you're fine.
When you look at some of these, you know, the long-term deliverables, they could be so far out now, and our long-term deliverables or 3-year deliverables are going to be, there's ones that we don't even have, and you know, it's getting town hall back to the schedule that we've had is a 3-year deliverable. I don't know if that's going to happen. You know, how long is this thing going to hang around and be a thorn in our side?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can add new things into the list. We can push things down the list. We can take things off the list if we think it's no longer possible. But it's still all part of what we were going to do anyways.
Yeah.
It's just we need to adapt to the climate.
Which is
more aggressive about certain things or less aggressive about certain things. That's all.
Which is always what we've been doing, right? Like, new information comes to light, we adapt the plan. It's
so like we're looking at, instead of we lose the third person in the town clerk's office, we lose 40% of our productivity. We can adapt to either of those things. It's just going to take more of a mind shift kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the task list and just quickly reading through it based on what I know now, which is not a whole lot, you know, on the intricacies of what Rory is living and breathing every day. But even just as quick scan, I feel like many of these, to an earlier point, will still be relevant. You know, I mean, for example, the first thing is activities, sports, and events being placed on the community services website. That should still happen.
It might be easier than ever right now.
Yeah, there will be even fewer things to put on.
Now is the time to attack because there's not a lot of data to work with.
Exactly. Now's the time to figure it out when you have less volume. So.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Like these administrative things, if anything, we've got staff sitting at home 4 days a week.
That's kind of where I was going. You know, the one where, you know, work with the department heads to develop their policy manuals. I mean,
never going to be a better time.
No better time.
Could it be a better time to be sitting home doing it that? And okay, I got all day today. My phone's not going to ring. You know, yes, that one. Where did that go? HR, right?
Yeah.
The policy heads compute the policy manuals for daily, monthly, quarterly, and annual activities. I mean, yeah.
And because I mean, what we're looking at based on the guidelines that have been put out, you know, they want you know, office spaces at no more than 50% capacity, and they want 6-foot buffer zones, and you guys have all been in town hall. The hallway isn't 6 feet wide, you know, so
You have a one-way path. You go out the selectman's door and back in down at the building department.
we're working on that. But what I mean is, like, staff is going to be on a staggered schedule. Even when we start increasing the staff in the office, at most we'll have one person in an office, right? So we'll have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday that swaps weeks, you know, which means people are still going to be home probably for at least part of their time until we get to yellow or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So, and in the ones that are still there, right, like police, at this point, I don't think Chief Zetkowski's schedule is that much different than it was on January 15th. There was a hectic 2 months in there, but you know, the protocols now have been developed for how we've adapted, so it should just be, you know, it should be done different. Tony DePrimo, same thing. The staggered schedule is in place.
Yeah.
What's he doing now? It should be no different than what he's normally doing. So all these administrative functions should be no different.
Maybe we start thinking about what we're going to do in the next month. Maybe we all take some homework, we go through the plan, we try to brainstorm what we think might change with the plan. Maybe we could get some department heads or something into the next meeting, maybe like 2, and figure out how they've been affected, maybe reiterate to them that there are aspects of the plan that they could still be accomplishing, and maybe try to build on that.
Yep. Good idea.
You know, the other things that we were talking about in February were trying to kind of adapt the questionnaire to get more information or better information out of them. So we could also return to that. And then when we invite them, you know, to share their experience with us, we can also, you know, 2 birds with 1 stone kind of thing. Or we could wait. We could just next meeting get updates and then go from there.
I almost feel like, well, I do feel like the next, you know, a week from now is going to be pivotal. You know, when that first step to open, you know, officially happens.
That is more 3 weeks from 3
Yeah.
weeks. So that's
3 weeks from now, I was kind of thinking, oh.
It depends on how responsible people are going to be,
and ultimately, right, like, all of it's out of our hands.
Mhm.
This committee can do nothing about coronavirus. The town can do so little, right? Our authority just doesn't approach that. So, I mean, you're right. It's going to be a wild next month or so, but that's why, like, I think we just got to plug on, right? We got to do what we've been doing, because I think more than ever, right? We've been operating the entire time this committee's been in existence. Forgive me, under Pax Miller, right? You know, things have been steady and they've been moving in a direction, and this is really the first big change that we've had. So it's kind of a good test for us, in that if we did our job right, the plan that we have, I mean, it should change, but some of the fundamentals should not change, right? So this will be an interesting exercise for us in the planning process. But I don't think now is the time to change what we're doing.
Yeah, we went to a more agile approach for a reason, and this is just a great opportunity to practice that agility.
All right, I agree. So I guess between now and our next meeting, then let's all take a look at, we want to just start with the task list because it's an easy, if anybody, and you know, the requirement is, you know, that you look at the task list and see if anything, in our opinion, either should change or we need more information to determine whether it needs to change. Again, like I said, just sort of scanning through it. Looking at it through that lens, there doesn't seem to be a lot of stuff that needs to be, you know, materially changed. But I think there are some things I might have a couple of questions about. You know, can we agree to do that before the next meeting? And then if your personal time allows, you know, dive into the deeper, you know, to the deeper plan. And then sort of see what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks. I mean, one thing I would love, I mean, and I don't know if it's even possible, is a way for somebody maybe other than you, because you live and you get all the information every day. Again, you know, and maybe I'm the only one who doesn't. But I would like to, you know, a heads up somehow if there are things that we should be, you know, we should be aware of. Maybe to Bob's point, not having to wait a month.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to, in normal times, keep you guys updated, but it's usually, you know, after the fact or things that are fairly certain to happen, you know, like if we're replacing a position that's been vacant or whatever. And I will certainly try to do the same. If the pace of things continues, I can commit to passing anything along as it happens. Even if the pace returns to early March, all bets are off. I mean, that was just for chaos. But I mean, absolutely. I can send along a draft of the reopening plan when we have it. And that'll give you guys a better idea kind of where we're at and what we're thinking the near term looks like.
I mean, the one thing I don't want to do is put more weight on your shoulders.
There's a reason that I'm on this committee, right? And it's not because of my unique qualifications, right? Other than my position. So it's comes with the territory, you know?
Yeah, but we don't want to break it yet.
I'll let you know if it becomes a problem.
Okay. All right. And I think then the next item, you know, our vision ideation, it's a little premature for us to really think about that, other than to say that we will put more of a focus on being nimble and agile and just making sure that we remember the spirit of the plan and you know, and change where we need to. But I don't think beyond that we need to formalize a vision at this particular juncture, because we don't really know we don't know quite yet. I think we will know.
We'll get a good idea pretty soon.
Yeah. Maybe not today. All right, well, is there anything else we want to talk about during our, you know, any we are open for further discussion. I mean, as always, we've been pretty open with our conversation flow, so that's never been a problem for us. But is there anything anybody particularly would like to bring up? Everybody staying healthy?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Knocking on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any, because if we haven't, the floater quit. So town hall doesn't have a floater, which actually kind of worked out timing wise.
Better for us if you quit. Rather
Yeah.
than have to pay her off.
One thing that's been great is that the fire, ambulance, and police departments have been getting sanitized on the regular throughout this whole thing. Because the schools have been closed, we've been able to use their custodial staff for sanitizing, which has been great. It's one of the big challenges we face going forward, unfortunately. Assuming schools reopen in the fall, the custodial staff from the schools will need to return to the schools at some point over the summer, which, as we look to reopen buildings that have been closed and basically not cleaned this whole time, creates a real, we were already pretty short-staffed in terms of custodians, and now it is one of the big challenges that we're going to face.
Sometimes you need to hire people. It is what it is.
And then the Board of Finance, as you guys probably know, is in charge of the budget this year because there was no referendum. They went flat again, which is good. The tax deferment program is in place, so we do not know what tax receipts will look like July. We don't have indications as to whether ECS funding and other state funding is coming in on a regular schedule. So the Board of Selectmen went ahead and the Board of Finance and authorized tax anticipation notes in case there is a cash flow issue as a result of all of this. What else? I don't know. I think that's it so far.
Yeah, I think those are the sort of things that, we'll need to make sure that we're mindful of. What are the things that are going to impact the way we think about the plan. But I'm sure you'll let us know when you do.
Yeah. When I know, you'll know.
For sure. All right. Anything else we should need to talk about today? All right, well, stay here, everybody. I miss you guys.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
We'll need to have another Christmas party when.
Well, we could do is virtual happy hour,
There you go.
There you go.
It is International Cocktail Day, so I hope everyone is celebrating.
I'll go do that.
Oh, I didn't even hear that.
You're welcome. An excuse.
Strictly for medicinal purposes. Strictly for medicinal purposes.
Thank
All
you
right,
for
everyone.
you guys let me join your crew here. So look
Yeah.
forward.
Thanks for being here, Bob. It's great to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome. All right. Well then, if our public has joined us, if we have any, again, this is Kathy. If there's any public comment, we'll look forward to that now.
Been conspicuously absent the whole time. So
You never know.
it's true.
All right, hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
First by Don, second by Stefan. All right, and we will adjourn at 8:15.
All right.
Good night, guys.